They say a woman alone is a woman in need. But I say a woman who embraces her solitude is a woman who finds her strength. Good morning, beautiful souls. Today I invite you to look beyond the noise, beyond the expectations, and beyond the fear of being alone. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, in the silence of solitude, there lives a power so pure, so fierce, that it transforms a woman from the inside out. This is not a tale of loneliness. It is a story of awakening. Because sometimes it is in the echo of our own heartbeat that we learn who we truly are. And today we talk about why a woman who spends time alone becomes unbreakable. When a woman chooses to spend time alone, it is often misunderstood. People may assume she is lonely, broken, or waiting for someone to complete her. But the truth is far more powerful. When a woman willingly embraces solitude, she begins a sacred journey, one that leads her to herself. In that quiet, unaccompanied space, she becomes aware of her inner world, the thoughts she had suppressed, the dreams she had delayed, and the emotions she had buried beneath years of expectations and obligations. This is the beginning of self-awareness, and it is one of the most transformative gifts a woman can give herself. In the chaos of life, women are often taught to serve, to be daughters, wives, mothers, caretakers, and workers. They pour themselves into these roles so deeply that over time they may forget where the role ends and where they begin. Solitude becomes the mirror in which she finally sees herself, not as a label, not as a title, but as a living, breathing, feeling human being. She sees the parts of herself she never had time to look at before. The woman who sits in silence, with no one around to impress or please, starts asking herself questions that matter. What do I want? What do I believe in? What brings me joy? What pain am I carrying that I've never dared to feel? As these questions rise to the surface, so does the truth. And it is in this confrontation with the truth that self-awareness is born. Solitude allows a woman to notice how her thoughts move, how her emotions unfold, and how her spirit responds to the world. She begins to realize what energizes her and what drains her. She discovers what feels aligned and what feels like self-betrayal. And this is not always a comfortable process. At first, it can feel like standing in front of a cracked mirror, seeing both the beauty and the brokenness. But even those cracks tell her something about her strength, about her survival, about her unspoken resilience. Without the distractions of constant interaction, she learns to differentiate between the voice of the world and the voice of her soul. She stops living on autopilot and begins to live with intention. She realizes that she no longer needs the applause of others to feel worthy. Her validation starts to come from within. The compliments she once craved, the reassurance she used to need, they become less important because she has finally met the one person whose opinion truly matters, her own. In this space of deep awareness, she reconnects with forgotten passions and unexplored talents. She might pick up a paintbrush again after years of telling herself she was too busy. She might write, sing, dance, meditate, or simply breathe in ways she never did before. She starts to make choices that reflect her values instead of conforming to societal expectations. She becomes more mindful of her time, her energy, her relationships. She stops saying yes when she means no, because she now understands the price of betraying herself. This kind of self-awareness is not arrogance. It is alignment, it is clarity, and it is powerful. Because a woman who knows herself cannot be easily manipulated. She cannot be swayed by every passing trend or opinion. She no longer lives to fit in. Instead, she chooses to stand out. Not because she wants to, but because she can't help it anymore. She has come too far to shrink herself back into a version of her that existed only to be accepted. In her solitude, she also learns to take responsibility. Not in a way that blames herself for everything that went wrong, but in a way that acknowledges her power. She stops waiting for someone to rescue her. She becomes her own rescuer. She stops blaming the world for not giving her opportunities and starts creating them. She becomes the author of her own story, rewriting the parts that once made her feel small. She no longer sees herself as a victim of circumstance, but as a creator of her life. As she becomes more self-awareness, she also becomes more compassionate toward others and toward herself. She recognizes her triggers and learns to respond instead of react. She understands that the way people treat her often says more about them than it does about her. And this gives her freedom, the freedom to forgive, the freedom to let go, the freedom to walk away from anything that no longer serves her growth. There is a quiet kind of confidence that grows in a woman who has spent time alone. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. It shows up in the way she carries herself, in the way she makes decisions, and in the way she refuses to settle for less than what she deserves. It shows in her boundaries, in her peace, and in the love she gives, not from desperation, but from fullness. Solitude, for such a woman, is no longer something to escape. It becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where she reconnects with her truth every time the world tries to make her forget it. She learns that being alone is not the same as being lonely. In fact, some of the most profound moments of connection she will ever experience happen when she is sitting quietly with herself, fully present, fully aware, and fully alive. She stops asking the world, "Who should I be?" and starts asking herself, "Who am I becoming?" And that changes everything. Strength is often misunderstood. We are taught to associate it with physical endurance, with the ability to carry burdens, to keep moving, to never break. But true strength, the kind that lasts, the kind that builds character, is emotional resilience. And emotional resilience is born not in the presence of others, but in solitude. When a woman spends time alone, when she chooses to walk through life's quiet valleys without constantly reaching for someone else's hand, she begins to develop the kind of strength that no one can see, but everyone can feel. When a woman sits alone, she's often met with everything she once tried to avoid: the memories she's buried, the pain she's ignored, the heartbreaks she never truly healed from. In the beginning, solitude can feel like a confrontation, with everything raw and unresolved. But here's the beautiful paradox. By allowing herself to feel it all, she begins to release it. By not running from her wounds, she begins to understand them. And in understanding, there is healing. This process doesn't happen overnight. At first, she might cry without knowing why. She might revisit old scars, question her choices, and even doubt her worth. But that is the work. That is the soil in which resilience grows. You see, resilience isn't about pretending to be okay. It's about sitting in the storm, allowing the rain to fall, and realizing that you will not drown. She learns that her emotions are not her enemies. They are messengers. And when she listens, truly listens, she begins to hear what her heart has been trying to say all along. In solitude, there are no distractions to numb the pain. There is no one to talk over her silence, no noise to drown her inner world. It's just her, raw, vulnerable, and real. And that's where the magic happens. She begins to notice how strong she already is. Not because she's holding it all together, but because she's allowing herself to fall apart and still trust that she can rebuild. The woman who chooses to be alone isn't running from the world. She's choosing to stop running from herself. And in that decision, she reclaims her power. She starts to understand that the pain she feels does not make her weak. On the contrary, it is a sign that she is alive, that she has loved deeply, that she has cared enough to be affected. And this realization shifts something deep within her. Instead of fearing her emotions, she begins to honor them. Over time, she becomes her own source of comfort. She learns how to self-soothe, how to be patient with her process, how to forgive herself for not knowing better when she was simply doing the best she could. She becomes the friend she always needed, the parent her inner child longed for, the partner her heart was searching for in others. This is not about isolation, this is about integration, bringing all the pieces of herself together in one place. Without shame, without judgment. As her emotional resilience grows, she stops reacting impulsively to life. She learns to pause, to breathe, to assess. She begins to understand that not everything needs a response. Not every provocation deserves her peace. She becomes less driven by fear and more anchored in faith. Faith in herself, faith in her journey, and faith that she can weather any storm that comes her way. She starts to recognize her triggers, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Why does that word hurt? Why does that silence scare me? Why does that situation drain me? These questions don't break her, they build her. Because each answer leads her closer to healing, closer to strength, closer to herself. This emotional resilience is visible in the way she chooses her battles. She no longer fights to prove a point or to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding her. She knows her truth, and that is enough. Her silence becomes her power, not her punishment. She walks away from things that disturb her peace, not because she's weak, but because she's wise. She's learned that peace is priceless, and she's no longer willing to pay for it with pieces of her soul. The woman who has built strength in solitude doesn't need chaos to feel alive. She doesn't chase after drama or beg for attention. She stays in the quiet, and it has become her refuge. Her strength is not in how loudly she speaks, but in how deeply she listens to herself, to life, to what is not being said. She has developed a kind of calm that cannot be shaken easily. Not because life stopped being hard, but because she stopped being afraid of it. Message on Vanch to Lady Bill Londi, stuck Friday. She received her destiny, ended up getting married and not getting divorced, also lament. She hasn't a penny, leans into the discomfort with the understanding that nothing is permanent, not the pain, not the joy, not the moment. She has learned how to ride the waves instead of drowning in them. She no longer sees herself as fragile. She sees herself as fluid, capable of bending without breaking. What solitude gives her is not a shield from suffering, but the tools to survive it. She becomes emotionally self-sufficient. That doesn't mean she doesn't need anyone. It means she doesn't depend on others for her stability. She welcomes love, but doesn't cling to it. She values connection, but doesn't lose herself in it. Her relationships improve, not because she gives more of herself, but because she gives from a place of wholeness. In moments of challenge, she no longer spirals. She grounds herself. She has developed rituals of resilience. Maybe it's journaling, prayer, meditation, movement, or simply pausing. These practices become her anchor. She has built an emotional toolkit through trial and tears, and now she knows how to use it. There's something incredibly beautiful about a woman who has learned to face herself in solitude. She doesn't wear her strength like armor, she wears it like skin, natural, soft, and unshakable. You see it in the way she carries herself, in the way she sets boundaries, in the way she gives love without losing herself. You see it in her eyes, the ones that have cried and now see clearly. You hear it in her voice, the one that trembled once but now speaks truth with steady grace. This is not a woman who has never felt broken. This is a woman who has built herself back up, piece by piece, with patience and pain and power. She has learned to be her own safe space, her own soft landing, her own strength. And that kind of resilience, it changes everything. So when you see a woman who walks with quiet confidence, who no longer fears being alone, know that she has met herself in the depths of solitude. She has fought silent battles, healed invisible wounds, and risen stronger than ever, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Her strength isn't loud, but it is unwavering. She no longer seeks rescue because she has become her own safe haven. And in her silence, there is a power louder than any applause. The power of a woman who knows her worth, owns her story, and stands tall in her truth.